Hague.
Very much, Mr. Chair. I'll just take a brief call to respond to some of the Minister's comments and to ask some further questions, and also to express my appreciation to the Minister for being prepared to answer questions in the Chair. It's very helpful. I'm very familiar with Orchard Street that the Minister has brought up, and I don't think I've ever heard it referred to as the Bronx, but perhaps the Minister moves in different circles to those that I do in Nelson. I guess it's certainly true that street is an example of some of the shameful neglect of the state housing stock that has occurred, and certainly the Nelson Tasman Housing Trust becoming involved actually, I think, is something that the Green Party would welcome and that I know would be welcomed by that community. But, Mr. Speaker, we're debating part one, and the profound and unusual provision in clause 4 of part 1 is entirely unnecessary for the kind of transformation that the Minister has referred to. Completely unnecessary. The Minister so far has not actually addressed that point around clause 4. Because that provision, Mr. Chair, is sweeping in its effect. So the Minister takes over may perform and exercise the functions, powers and duties of the corporation. Now, Mr. Chair, that is a reversal of one of the underpinning tenets of the way we have established the state sector. In the State Sector Act, we made explicit, or Parliament made explicit, that we were separating out political decision-making that would remain the domain of ministers from implementation of policy. Implementation would stay with those with subject expertise in their ministries. That's why we have agreements between ministers and ministries. And there are various objectives of that reform, not all of which I support, but several of them were these. One was to protect citizens from the capricious actions of ministers, from the arbitrariness of political decisions being made almost randomly. Another was to ensure that citizens would continue to have recourse to the remedies of administrative law. And those remedies are far less certain in a situation where decisions and implementation is undertaken by ministers, Mr. Chair. And I can see no reason at all in the objectives that the government has for this bill, for this extraordinary reversal of the State Sector Act's provisions and intent that occurs here in clause 4, subclause 2A2 in particular. So not having transparent rules around that is a very deep problem, and I would like to ask the Minister a series of questions about that. Why does, if the government believes that this power for ministers is essential, it has not yet made out the case for that? What is the case the government has for ministers taking on these actions and not simply instructing Housing New Zealand on the criteria and the situations in which it would wish particular actions to be taken? Instead, there's this almost Henry VIII power that ministers would retain to themselves. The bill as it stands contains no test, no criteria at all for the minister's action. It's entirely a matter of political choice on the part of the minister. And Mr. Chair, I asked the Minister in the chair to explain to the committee here why the bill contains no criteria and why it could not. Will he be prepared to insert some criteria so that even if the government retains its case for ministers taking on this power, that there would at least for the public be some level of protection about the circumstances in which ministers would take on this extraordinary power? Mr. Chair, I will leave it at that. Thank you.